Thanks for having me.
Of
Cheers.
course, man. Cheers to you too, man. Welcome to the show, Sports and Hip Hop with DJ Mad Max. We have one of the nicest MCs in the game. Goes by the name of Asher Roth. Asher Roth, how you doing tonight, man?
Oh,
Welcome to the
my
show.
my guy. I'm doing well, bro. Fresh off of a 49ers victory against the Cowboys, you know?
It doesn't get any better than that. And there's a lot of controversy in that last play with the referee touching that ball in the end. But I mean, at least you got the win. That's all that counts.
And it shouldn't even have been that close, you know?
Yeah, no, it shouldn't have. How do you feel about Garoppolo? You think he's going to be gone next year? Trey Lance is coming in?
Yeah, I think it's a given just because it's the business, you know? But
Mhm.
dude, I think we got to give Garoppolo his love. He really kind of pulled us out of the doldrums. And I remember when he came in and won, reeled off 5 straight victories, and we were all like just happy to have a quarterback for the first time since Cap. And so I think people have a short memory on how bad it was for a little bit. And Jimmy G's, they love him. I've got love for him, even though there was a really good article written on the Athletic today by Marcus Thompson, and he was just saying that like he really makes you feel all the ranges of emotions, where it's just like he does some bonehead shit for sure, but then he also will throw some dimes sometimes that like against the Rams that throw to Debo. But a lot of us are still waiting on that moment, like that defining moment that kind of is going to overshadow the overthrow in the Super Bowl. So hopefully it comes this upcoming week against the Pack.
Yeah, I hope so, and I hope you guys go far into the playoffs and you get that win because you almost had it against the Chiefs there 2 years ago. So I'm hoping that you do. You brought up Kaepernick, and it's funny that you mentioned him on your song Charlemagne, and that saying that he should be in the league still, and he should. You look at all these quarterbacks, and if you want to go specifically, Mike Glennon with the Giants, it's pretty
Right.
obvious that Kaepernick should be in this league and others shouldn't.
Yeah, and watching that all unfold firsthand, and for someone like myself, obviously in rap music, and feeling that when you have a platform, that you do have responsibility in kind of what you say, how you say it, those things. You're responsible for the things that are coming out of your mouth, and we've seen it a lot with athletes and even with your show, specifically sports and hip hop. There's so much crossover in those two worlds, right?
Yeah.
But we've seen it a lot with athletes and with LeBron James, kind of like that whole mantra that politicians had said, just shut up and dribble and stuff. But athletes are some of the most famous um, um, creators, I guess, for just people in general in our entire world. I mean, global superstars. So it's tricky when they're not educated on social matters. So maybe their heart's in the right place, but maybe they're not fully educated on what's going on. And so what was interesting with Kaepernick was you could tell that his heart was in the right place, but he still needed to get educated on what was going on. And now keep in mind, he's out there in the Bay Area, Oakland, home of the Black Panthers,
Yeah.
home of a lot of the dialogue and revolutionary times of social justice, civil rights, and all those things. So he was cast in the middle of a really big conversation and a really important one. So I'm really proud of just the courage that it takes for somebody when you're the starting quarterback of a franchise, $1 billion business, and for you to put yourself out there like that, for something that, again, it's just bigger than sports at that point. It was really, really interesting to watch that all unfold because, again, I think it just started with, this is how I feel, I'm going to sit down.
Yeah.
And then the Marine had sat with him and told him, hey, maybe don't sit, maybe kneel.
Mhm.
And so then it moves to a kneel, and then it just takes on a life of its own. But really a special guy, and I wish Cap well, and I hope what he was able to do continues to push the conversations forward, man.
I hope so, especially in this day and age. Another bar that I really enjoyed hearing off of Charlemagne too was I'm Jordy Nelson recorded and scored by Danny Elfman. That was crazy.
Hey, man, you took some notes.
Yeah, man. I'm someone that appreciates the bars and the real hip hop and authenticity, and I can tell that you studied the greats that came before you. I know you've cited in the past that Eminem and Jay-Z were main inspirations, but Pun was someone that you really looked up to, and you can tell just in certain punchlines there that inspiration because Pun kind of had that pitter patter where you just go in and out in
For
his
sure.
rhymes with the lyrics, and I kind of recognize that as you being a student of the game and kind of just putting that into your raps.
Yeah, the technical side of rap is always really funny. I actually needed to get back to that because there was a part in my career where I got really focused on kind of songwriting and ideas. And I got away from just the playfulness and wordplay and taking sounds and manipulating them. And that was actually and has always been something that geeks me out the most. And someone like yourself as well, like seeing how excited you are about it. Like, you know, we call it bar work for the
Yeah.
most part. And that a lot of that comes down to just like this technical aspect of just playing around with words. And it's fun, man. When you do it well and you say something hot and you say it in a really dope way and you say it kind of mathematically and the scheme is dope, it's special.
Yeah. And I just go back to the Greenhouse Effect Volume 1 and Volume 2. Just listen to some of those track numbers, A1, just going back. Those were the barred out records that I enjoyed
Mhm.
from you. Everyone always brings up I Love College. I Love College puts you on the map, but those Greenhouse Effect volumes for me is the definition of Asher Roth.
I appreciate that, man. And like, you know, for me, it's sometimes it's funny, kind of objectively, I like to go back and just to listen to some of the stuff. And I'll revisit Greenhouse Effect Volume 2 and just be like, damn, there's some shit on this, you know, that people might have missed. And but I think sports references, it's like it's a lot, like, you know, going in the cage and getting your swings in or like working on your routes. I mean, some of the like when I bring up Jordy Nelson and I bring up some of these sports references, I always have a lot of love for these guys who are just like fundamentally sound. Watching like Hunter Renfro, that dude's not supposed to be in the league. You know
No.
what I'm saying? But my man knows how to get open. And so I like that. I almost study their game just as much as I study other rappers. Of just like, yo, being crafty. You know what I mean? Being crafty can keep you around for quite some time.
It definitely can, especially with your newest project, Greenhouse Effect Volume 3. I loved how you incorporated your fans with this project because you were reaching out to them on different platforms, and you were putting the acapellas down, and they were sending in submissions, and this is how it all came about.
Yeah, it was kind of important. I mean, because the times called for it, you know.
Yeah.
We're all kind of home twiddling our thumbs a little bit, like what's going on? What are we supposed to be doing? And you know, I always wanted to do a Greenhouse Effect Volume 3, but with streaming and everything has changed so much since the first Greenhouse came out. It's like, you know, it's one thing when you're just rapping over other people's beats, but now to the point with streaming and all of these new forms of entertainment for the most part, you can't really just throw other people, you can't throw raps over other people's beats. It's not really worth it. You know what I'm
No.
saying? You can't get it on streaming unless you're working with somebody who can help you clear that stuff. And so it all just added up to this kind of perfect moment where I was like, yo, let's get the fans involved who are, there's so many talented kids out there on the internet, man, like that are either following what you're doing, even just as an
Thanks, man.
interviewer and a journalist and someone like myself, just whoever's working on their craft, there are people watching it and kind of seeing what you're doing. And it's always nice to kind of reach it, you know, reach out, give a hand out and say, yo, let's see if we can do something together. And man, Greenhouse Effect Volume 3, it might not as be as like, you know, um high style profiling as like the original Greenhouse 1 and 2 with drama and canon, but I'm so proud of the kids and the artists that are involved in that because they talk about just taking an opportunity and delivering. You're putting these kids in like, you know, you're just giving them a shot. You're not writing raps for them. You're not really A&R in the project. You're just basically saying, here's an idea, you know, run with it. And they did a really, really good job. And I was very happy to put my name on that, and very, very fortunate that those kids showed out and really had a good time.
Mhm. And the beat switch on Bad Apple Magic, that was crazy too on the production side.
You already know, yeah. That's Heather Gray. He's out in Salt Lake City, and funny enough, this will be the first time we'll be announcing that Heather and I are actually working on an EP that will be dropping soon. It's called Gray. It's kind of about this like in between space that we're in right now. That's like in between hope and doubt. Really, really special stuff. But Heather Gray's got some amazing production, and I'm happy to announce right here on your show that we'll be putting out an EP together. So I'm glad you like Bad Apple Magic.
That's huge. Yeah, because me, I'm someone that really dives into the discographies of all hip hop artists. We bring up pun. My favorite pun record of all time is Parental Discretion is Advised. I'm
Mm.
someone that goes real deep into those deep cuts, even what people would say is B-sides. Those records to me are the ones that people should really be putting the ear to because you have to do the mainstream records to sell yourself, but the message lies in those B-side tracks.
You already know, man. I just actually listened to a Questlove interview. He was talking. I think he was just talking about Black Thought getting his flowers, but he had mentioned just artists. his favorite songs of his favorite artists are B-sides. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's really where the magic lies, because a single or whatever it may be kind of might have some other obligations, if you will.
You got that right. I know some of your favorite rappers as well. Most Def, Black Thought, you just mentioned. You gave
Hmm.
Noriega his flowers when you were on his show. Biggie. So
Hmm.
you're a big student of the game. I can tell from behind you, you got a Biggie painting on the wall too.
Oh, little young Lennox, yeah, for sure. Yeah, man. I mean, like, again, it's always tough when you're asked to give your top five, because it's kind of time and place. And I think unadulterated Andre 3000 is really in there for me. I am and actually a big fan of ODB and Keith Murray. I mean, those are two dudes that, like, listening to growing up, they're just one of ones. And so, I would definitely add them to the part of the conversation as well, of just like listening to people and just being like, man, this feels so good and so authentic. And so those are other people on that laundry list of MCs that are just that came before me, and you just want to make sure that kids don't ever forget. It's funny, not to belabor the point, but it's like the same thing with the Niners and the Cowboys rivalry. Kyle Shanahan's talking to his team about this Cowboys Niners rivalry, and some of the kids on the team are like, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Because they weren't alive for the Cowboys and the Niners in the 90s. And so it's very similar with some of these MCs, like Del the Funky Homo Sapien, and some cats that, like, might not be in the mainstream right now, but inspired some of our favorite MCs growing up in the 90s, and people need to be made aware of them through whether it be myself or other MCs down the line.
It's something that you do in relation to Keith Murray too. You're not afraid of stepping out of being inside the box. If you think of a Keith Murray record, Straight Jacket on The
Woo!
Most Beautiful Thing in the World, that track goes crazy.
Hmm. Yeah, man. I think it's like exactly like even the most beautifulest thing in the world, like just making up your own word.
Yeah.
Beautifulest and a word, but it is. You know what I mean? And I think it's even maybe a word that when it's said out loud, there are a lot of people in this world that the first thing that they would think about is Keith Murray. And so that authenticity, again, to your point about B-sides and just like classic recordings, things that you've heard, and you just go, damn, like they don't make them like that anymore. But absolutely, man, it's cool to hear that you've kind of tapped into some of these MCs, and they've spoken to you just like they've spoken to me and millions of other people around the world.
Yeah. And it's a shame. I've heard you speak about it in different interviews. Just the people that really care about the culture and the craft of hip hop, people just don't care about it as much anymore. It's insane. But you do see the love finally going towards your way here with rappers such as Griselda, Dave East. You got some bar lords in the game right now, and it's slowly turning, I think. I think it's slowly turning for you guys.
Yeah, and it's true, bro. I mean, it is cyclical for what it's worth, right? And it's also, as far as it's entertainment.
Yeah.
And so what's tricky about rap music, and we talk about it with punk music too, is that, like, people get in the game and their intentions are pure, right? And you see it a lot with rap music as well. And I bring it up specifically about rap music is because that's what I've paid most attention to. But if you got experts in classic rock and roll and all these other things, they might have the same story. But people get into the game and they get paid, right? And once they get paid, it kind of like maybe it chills them out a little bit, and they maybe lose their hunger, whatever it may be. And so we've seen that a lot, where a lot of the work, specifically in rap music, we see it's like their early work is so good. And then, like, as the career goes on, the work is like, you know, a little bit not as good.
I
And
know what you mean.
you know what I mean? And like I think that it's kind of almost counterintuitive, right? You would almost feel like the longer you go on in your career, your work gets better and more refined, and just like that's always been interesting to me. And so we've used the word a couple times, like we love the craft, right? Like
Mhm.
it's a craft, it's an art form. And so I have a ton of respect and appreciation for people who get into this game, so to speak, and they do well financially and they make a bunch of money and they're popular and they're able to travel the world and have all the experiences, and then they kind of bow out. But for me, it's always been kind of this sustainability thing of like, I'm going to continue to do what I'm going to do. I'm going to experiment. I'm going to mess around with records like Retro Hash and elaborate on that a little bit with Flowers on the Weekend and work on with musicians and musicality, and try to become a better songwriter and all those things, and perfect my craft, so to speak. But I also want to do it for 20, 25, 30, 35 years, you know. I hope that I'm making my best shit at 60, 65 years old. You know? I still want people to be like, yo, are you listening to what this fool's doing? It's really, really hard to do, you know, because we have to pay our bills. And obviously the way that the marketplace is, it's always like younger and hotter and sexier and all these things. And that stuff's always going to move the market. But you know, it's always been important to me to create a foundation and a fan base around doing what it is that I do. And to your point about the Dave Easts and the people who just do these things really well and they continue to do them, I think there's always going to be fans for that.
Yeah. And you see that here. You have a hardcore audience. Dave East has a hardcore audience. Someone I think that blends the two very well is G Herbo, because he's got that young audience and he has that audience where OGs respect him because he'll have some tracks where he spits some bars.
Yeah, it's tricky, you know, and I'm not overly familiar with G Herbo's with discography, but the stuff that I hear, it's like, again, timing, and timing is everything, right? So it's like, when I came up, it's early 2000s. We didn't have streaming.
No.
We didn't have some of these technological apps that were available. YouTube really was just kind of like sprouting up, and so it's almost like, I'm not like jealous or anything like that, but it is like, damn, what if I Love College came out when Snapchat was out? You know what I mean? Or all of these things. It is so crazy but timing is everything, and so. These kids who have the opportunity to grow these enormous fan bases, you know, I hope they're taking advantage of it for sure.
I've also heard you speak about the numbers. The only thing that comes to mind when thinking about the numbers that makes it tricky is the fact that these record companies take towards these records just because of the numbers, but we don't know. Are they just skimming through it? Because I've heard you say the skim portion of it. If they're just skimming through it, that's not the way that record companies should really be going about it, because is it really a hot record?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. There's like that old interview with Frank Zappa when he's talking about like the old people that were just smoking cigars, chomping cigars, and had no idea about the music industry at all. And they're like, let's just go with it. You know what I mean? And he really appreciated that because there was a little bit of time for just discovery and just like, who knows? Nobody knows. And I think that's really what's important about art in general, is just like, it's so subjective. Like, who knows? Let's give people a chance. And so now with this kind of data driven, algorithmic, you know, discovery stuff, everything's kind of dialed in.
Yeah.
And so there aren't that many risks being taken, which I think is why you're seeing a lot of the music sound similar, is because if this works, then we're going to continue to just milk it and use this until nobody wants it anymore. And the data will tell us when they don't want it anymore. And so that's what's nice about the Griseldas of the world and the Dave Easts of the world. And someone like myself, is that you would hope that we're kind of on our, you know, soapbox, for whatever it's worth, of saying like, trust, you know, don't trust the data. People want something else, you know, they're just clicking on this stuff maybe because, you know, it's being forced for them to click on. So, you know, the numbers are a tricky game for sure, specifically right now. And I'm learning as I go. I'm continuing to always learn, but I really do think authenticity reigns supreme. And I hope that there's like, you know, new leadership coming into these businesses that are kind of the ones that help push the message. I'm hoping that there's people that take on the role, that are down to give people a chance. I mean, Tunji, my buddy Tunji, who had just took over Def Jam, and was somebody kind of instrumental, somebody I've known for a while. He comes from being a rapper, you know, he was in a rap group, and that dude just has a good ear. And so there are people coming up that are our age that I think that are going to take more risks, hopefully.
I hope so, especially for your case, and real rappers who are serious about their craft. As I keep going back to that word craft, is being an MC in this game. I think you're going to start seeing some changes soon here. But I want to take things back to the beginning and just tell me about your life of growing up in Morrisville, Pennsylvania.
Quiet, man. Baseball, dude. I
Yeah.
mean, if you had to say, you know, one word that was for me with more, so it was just baseball. And, you know, it was when I started to get older, and, you know, these kids, when they're 16 years old, they're suddenly 6'4", hitting balls 300, 400 feet. You're just like, yeah, dude, I'm probably not going to be a baseball player. And so, you know, music crept in, and it was another thing. But yeah, growing up right outside Philadelphia, I'm now back in Philly. And obviously everyone is kind of up in arms when they find out that I'm not an Eagles or a Phillies fan. I will take the train down and go watch Phillies baseball though. You know, just because Citizens Bank is a great park. And just sitting up there up high and checking out the skyline is a beautiful thing. But here in Philadelphia now, grew up about 30 minutes north in Morrisville and bopped around for a little bit. But at the end of the day, Morrisville put me on to baseball.
Morrisville, you put it on the map, doing great things out there. You're going back there. It's great how you went back to where you came from, because most rappers nowadays, you know, especially in certain situations like you have with Nipsey, it's always interesting to see rappers go back, and then that tragic situation that happened with Nipsey, it's just there's always a complicated thing that happens with certain people, and you know that's just what comes with being a rapper, unfortunately, and being successful too.
Well, you're right. I mean, they talked about it, I think, about Kyle Lowry coming back to Philadelphia. It might have been Kyle, I can't remember. But basically talking about how sometimes it's really important for these kids to get out of their neighborhoods,
Yeah.
you know, because, you know, their neighborhoods and their surroundings could be tumultuous. And, you know, and sometimes it's good to get away from some of these areas that, you know, might try to pull you back to just, you know, being rambunctious. And so, you know, specifically Philly, man, too. So Philly, you know, is a black city. It's neglected. It's one of the poor cities in America. So we've got a lot of work to do. But that was also one of the things that, like, coming back here, there's not a tremendous amount to do in Philadelphia. There's not, the music industry isn't in Philadelphia. There's all types of ridiculously talented musicians. There's amazing songwriters and you know, obviously the Roots from here. Big shout out to them, and a big shout out to, like, you know, G Love and the Special Sauce. There's so many, and you know, we were fortunate enough to actually build an outdoor venue right by my place called Sunflower Philly to help you know, perpetuate and encourage live performance, even for people who are already established, but for also younger kids who just want to start performing and, you know, can't necessarily get into underground arts, or, you know, might not be ready for the TLA or anything like that. And so that was something really important to me. But coming back to Philly was kind of counterintuitive, because you, a lot of people just are too big to be here. You know, you go to Atlanta or you go to LA, and that's pretty much it. And so coming back to Philly was more about, you know, helping cultivate and be a part of the scene here, because dumb talented people and just being closer to family was important to me. So
And you're here. You're not a Eagles fan, but I have seen you wear your Randall Cunningham jersey in the summertime music videos. You
you
still,
got you
even
you
even
gotta
though you're not a
respect it.
fan, you represent it.
For sure, man. I mean, look, we even got the one and only, you know, Princess Diana in the
The
Eagles
Eagle
jacket, you
jacket.
know. So, you know, I obviously want to see the Eagles do well. The first year I got back, the Eagles actually won the Super Bowl. So that was really fun. I was joking and telling everybody I was good luck and everything like that. But you know, and we went out and celebrated. And I do root for the Philadelphia 76ers, and I do root for the Philadelphia Flyers, mainly because the Niners and the San Francisco Giants are from my father. My dad is a West Coast kid who raised me and just basically was like, all right, son, it's Bill Walsh is the man and Willie Mays is the man. You know what I mean? And the rest is on you. And so, you know, I've had some fun growing up, but, you know, being back in Philly, and I like to think that, like, the sports fandom in Philadelphia is still the same in me. It's just transferred over to different teams. And so I'm enjoying it right now. I can't lie.
Yeah, no, for sure. I want to get into your time. I believe it's Westchester College, because you were pursuing your degree in elementary education.
Yep. Yeah, man. Westchester University for sure. That's again kind of the you know, it's not Penn State, you know, and that was the funny thing, just like being at went to Pennsbury High School, and just everybody went to Penn State. And so I didn't really want to go there. And so I stayed around, and Westchester has an amazing education program. I kind of always knew I felt like I wanted to be a teacher, and specifically elementary school teacher, because, you know, just patience with those kids, hanging out with them at a young, formidable age is fun. Maybe, you know, high school could be fun too. And even in the Greenhouse Effect Volume 3, I take on the role of the professor. So who knows, one of these days, if I actually really do go back to school and get that master's degree. I need my bachelor's too, man. I didn't even graduate. I dropped out. I dropped out to do rap music. Do not be like me. Um, but yeah, man, Westchester University was a short stint, but again, um, had so much fun just being there and just like, again, social intelligence, learning about people, making friends, rapping in basements, having some of my first performances, you know, and for what it's worth, obviously the business of college is a real thing. And we could have an entire conversation around that, around, you know, what college is and what it's becoming. But I do think that there's a very amazing time in people's lives, that 18 to 22, 18 to 25, that little window of making mistakes. You know, even though it's a forever process, learning about yourself, learning who you are, failing, you know what I mean? So, and just getting out there on your own. You know, I am a kind of a believer in a gap year. I do think that, you know, it's a little early to be starting school and kind of um, thinking that kids should know what they want to do with their lives at that time. But you know, getting there, knowing that there was an education program that I was pursuing at the time, knowing that I could always go back was kind of a reason why I left. When I got the opportunity to go down to Atlanta, it was one of those things where I was like, you know what, I can always come back here. But I have nothing but you know, good emotions and feelings when I think about Westchester and think about the time I spent there.
You brought up an interesting word, failures, and not everyone admits their failures that they've had throughout their career. What's a failure that you've had even before you started rap, or even if you want to bring it up, what you had during your career, in your rap career, if you had a failure that
Hmm.
you turned into a success?
Yeah, I think it would be, you know, a lot of the time, I think for me, I blindly trusted people, and not in a bad way, but I just kind of like, especially when the business was going on. And again, because of the tools that are available to us, I didn't ask enough questions, and I didn't kind of like stand up for myself when I was younger. I kind of just like went with it. You know, growing up being kind of non-confrontational as it is. I mean, I'm the baby of three, so I have two older sisters and then me. And so being the only boy, your father's only son, your mom's only son, you kind of like are in a good spot. You know what I'm saying? You're in a good spot. And so, you know, when I got into a space where life got real, so to speak, and confrontation became a thing, I kind of wouldn't stick up for myself as much. I would just be like, whatever. Let's just let that happen. And I think that quality, now that as an adult, I've become a little bit more like, here's what I would like to see happen. Like um, I don't avoid confrontation anymore, because it doesn't necessarily need to be a confrontation. It just needs to be a conversation. And so working out how you feel and all of those things, they're all important parts. And so growing up, I think this is probably relatable for a lot of people, is avoiding those awkward conversations. And then it turns into something it doesn't need to be. So my failures, what I would describe as failures, or just kind of like, you know, instances that I wish I had that one back, was when I just didn't stand up for myself. But, you know, as I got older and in some of those crunch time moments when I did say, this is what I want to do, it might have not worked out in my favor right then and there. But now I'm in a position, even though I kind of had to venture out on my own, right now I'm in probably the best position I've ever been in my career to kind of just like steer my own ship and make my own decisions. And I stood up for myself in times when typically I wouldn't have. And because of that, now I have just a little bit more control over what it is that I'm trying to do.
And that's great to hear that you actually found that way to gain control over what you're doing, and especially moving forward in your career. I'm curious to know when it was that you really fell in love with hip hop. I know you, as I mentioned before, you've cited Eminem and Jay-Z as major influences, because I believe your first CD that you bought was the Dave Matthews Band CD.
Yeah, bro, you're pulling out the greatest hits right here.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, man, like, you know, again, growing up in like a, you know, white suburban household, there was, you know, we had Stevie Wonder and these kind of things
The
playing. And
Temptations was played in your
yeah,
house. Yeah.
my dad was a Bruce Springsteen guy. I think the best response to that is I wish I was a Bruce Springsteen guy. I wasn't really. And then just obviously the era of us growing up. So like you know, those early cassette tapes that you're buying. But like, I think the first cassette that I had was actually Busta Rhymes' When Disaster Strikes.
Mm.
And then, you know, because but again, like even when I'm even listening to Aquemini when I was young, the When Disaster Strikes album, you know, listening to some of these records that like I had two moments with them. I had them very early on because of like, you know, Rosa Parks and Skew It on the Barbie. But then like you re-listen to it again at a certain era in a certain age and you go, this is unreal. I don't even care. Like again, it comes to the B-sides. You know, I remember my boy Sean O'Neill, who was really big in my upcoming of rap music, and he was trying to put me on a Nas, but I was never really super Nas guy, you know what I mean? But him trying to put me onto Nas and our love for Wu-Tang Clan and sharing our love for Wu-Tang Clan and like me playing the song Dog Shit over and over again and like stuff like this and so like you know that it's not like a specific moment in time, it's just kind of this like era of coming of age of like you know 11, 12, 13, you know even maybe 10, when you're starting to make your own decisions and you're starting to discover these things on your own and you're starting to take things that aren't necessarily in the house anymore, like you're buying your own CDs and not necessarily just listening to what your parents had. You know, I credit my parents because they did have music and music was on, but you know, my mom's listening to like classical music, you know, and you know, my dad was more into writing than he was into listening. And you know, because of that, it made me who I am because I took some of that literature writing prowess that he was more into. And then, you know, my mom coming from a jazz background, my grandfather was a jazz trumpet player and pianist, and like you know that performance aspect and taking that writing and that performing and putting it together. But for the most part, again, two older sisters who one was like way more into like the alt grunge like indie scene, and then another one, the oldest, who was into like boy bands and pop music and you know like Tevin Campbell and stuff. And so like I was on my own for the most part. And so, yeah, like the music discovery at 11 to 12, 13, when you're making your own decisions and the friends that you have around you, those are all the things that really played a huge role in me, you know, falling in love with hip hop, the rhythm, you know, the expression of this is what's going on in the world and this is how I feel about it, and it being pretty poignant. um, the fact that you could kind of make all these words rhyme, the mathematics to it all, you know, and then hearing, you know, Wu-Tang in that era talk about mathematics and science. You have all of these things baked into just like one culture and one conversation. And so, you know, hip hop culture to me has been very formidable from the knowledge standpoint, the knowledge of self, you know, the knowledge of and knowing what's going on around you, the community side of things, the dancing, um, all of that stuff is just as important to me as the expression. And so I fall in love with it kind of more and more every day, like doing finding out about artists that I had no idea, that someone was like, yo, this kind of sounds like this person. And I'll go back and like, you know, listen to Dr. Octagon and just be like, yo, what the
Cool
fuck?
Keith.
You know? Yeah, exactly. And so it's just like, you know, that's what's so fun. You know, hip hop's obviously one of the younger genres of music, but like, you know, there's so much there, man. I mean, again, sampling, it's been tricky because, you know, after the Paul's Boutique and the sampling of the
Beastie
Rolling
Boys.
Stones, yeah, like, you know, sampling and changing of the copyright and all that stuff has changed, but sampling was so dope because you'd hear a song and then you'd get to learn about this original song that got sampled. And so again, to nerd out a little bit, it's just so special for so many different reasons.
Just think about Big Papa when they sampled the Isley Brothers with that record,
What, you know
Between
what
the
I mean?
Sheets. It's crazy.
And then if you don't know who the Isley Brothers are, and then you hear that record, like, oh, I love the song. And someone goes, oh, you ever heard the original? And they're like, oh, and now you've just gone on a whole another route to like go through a whole Isley Brothers discography. And it's just like, it's special, man. And important.
It is, and it's great that you are a student in the game and knowing about Cool Keith and Dr. Octagon because of the many personalities that he took on. to me, he's the Stephen King of rap in a way, because MF Doom, he was always the villain in hip hop. He had his own character. Kool Keith had these personalities where he was like the king of horror hip hop, which is horrorcore.
Bro, and those guys would thrive right now. You know what I mean? With the opportunity right now, with these like kind of new avatars and what's happening in the NFT space, and, you know, being able to reinvent yourself in so many different forms. I mean, that is so inspiring and something that, again, I look to do. I hope I'm doing that. Like, you know, if I'm living long enough, you know, getting to those moments and getting to a space where I feel comfortable enough to say, let's switch this up. But, you know, being fans and of comic books and seeing how these character developments and all those things. I mean, special. Kool Keith, MF Doom, who you just named, those guys have like, they have their own little story that's going on, and like that's so fun and shouldn't be taken for granted.
No, and you look back at it with MF Doom started out as Zevlov X
Yep.
with KMD, and then Kool Keith with the Ultramagnetic MCs. Despite everything he did in his solo career, it's always interesting to see how they just completely changed their profiles. And man, those are two of the most underrated when it comes to just being brought up in top tens and stuff that should be mentioned a lot more.
Absolutely. And but like, you know, it's interesting, like the cyclical stuff that we were talking about earlier, like slowly but surely it's trickling in that people are recognizing the greatness, you know?
Yeah.
And so it might take time, but that's kind of one of the reasons a lot of the time I'm kind of talking about being patient with these things, because, you know, we've grown up in an era where a lot of these successes, they're rather instantaneous, even if it's just likes and retweets, you know, however you classify, you know, your wins. We're getting those things rather, and daddy, I want it and I want it right now. But it's really fun to still see some of this you know, MF Doom and that world be part of like Adult Swim, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so being patient with the process and allowing things come to you is an important mantra for me. And you seeing it from all of these kind of MCs from before that maybe were considered underground, but now, you know, they're one of the first rappers out of these kids' mouths of being like, that's what I listen to.
Yeah. We bring up MF Doom when he was Zevlov X. One of his first songs too that I remember him being featured on was Third Base's Gas Face. And I've heard you
Mhm.
bring up Third Base before and paying homage because those were the white rappers that paved the way for Eminem and such as yourself. What does it mean to be a part of that category of being a respected hip hop MC who is white?
I mean, you know, regardless of race, you just want to
Yeah.
contribute, right? And so, like, you know, Dante Ross is the one that really kind of put me onto that world. And just like, you know, whether he knows it or not, was just kind of like, you know, again, knowledge of self, stay sharp, know who came before you. And again, to tie sports into this, George Kittle has been big on this too with the 49ers of like, yo, we stand on legends' shoulders. And like, you know, I'm not here without people that have come before me, whether it's Third Base or whether it's Eminem or other white rappers, but also other rappers that I've jacked little things from, like Kweli in the Black Star album, and learned, he taught me so much how to rap. And so like Black Thought, you know, these are guys that I've listened to and studied and been like, damn, you know, and then you over time you just slowly start to make it your own and it becomes your own thing. And so I think most importantly, you know, especially as we get into a space where, you know, white rappers might actually be a little bit more common, you just want to make sure that you're contributing and coming from a space of like respect, love, and appreciation, that this is, you know, this is a culture,
Yeah.
for a lack of better words. This is something that you want to be contributing towards and not necessarily just stealing from, because it shouldn't be an ego trip. It's really not about me at all. I'm just kind of the messenger, you know what I mean? And honing in my craft to make sure that I'm delivering kind of the best message that I can deliver.
And you sure have done that throughout your career and continue to do that. MySpace, you were dropping all your verses on MySpace. You connect with Scooter Braun. What was that conversation that you had with him through MySpace that he was able to fly you down in a weekend, and all of a sudden you signed with him and he's your manager? What was that conversation that you had that really just blew him away for him to take you under his wing?
Um, you know, I remember chopping with Scooter, and he had sent me over an article, and he was with, I can't remember if it was like Big Boy from Outkast and Ashton Kutcher, and he was kind of already in Atlanta, and he was
I think he
kind
was
of a,
under so
yeah, so
deaf.
deaf, yeah.
Yeah.
So he was he was in the scene. And I think, when you're a young, impressionable kid and people are sending you pictures of them in the scene and like, you can do this too. You're just like, yo, all right. Um, and it's not to say that Scooter isn't like a hip hop head. It's just that he is very focused on other things. You know what I mean? So we didn't have this huge conversation about like music and being on the, oh, we listen to the same stuff. It was just more like, hey man, I wanna be a part of what you're doing. It was more rooted in family. I had a joint called Family Man, that was just about, again, coming from a family in Morrisville playing baseball, two older sisters. My parents luckily are still together. They thugged it out. And so when I wrote about that and I put it on MySpace, he heard that. He has a tattoo family on his wrist. And so it kind of just, he's one of those synchronicity dudes. And things happened that night. Obviously it's his story to tell on why he reached out to me. But it was just one of those things. Again, here's an opportunity, say yes to it. I can always go back to school. You know what I mean? Let's see what happens. And so it's just one of those say yes theory moments where you just say yes to it, get yourself down to Atlanta, rap for Shaka Zulu, Ludacris's manager, hanging out with Tricky Stort in the Dream, and just getting through the door, meeting people, ultimately settling in with Steve Rifkin and Loud, which, was a lot of fun. I remember him laughing about, if you ever would have told me I'd be signing a white rapper named Asher Roth, I'd be laughing at you. But when you talk about Pun, when you talk about Pharoah Monch, like when you talk about some of my favorite MCs, Mobb Deep. I mean, again, Wu-Tang, obviously, like Steve's responsible for all that stuff, or at least partly responsible.
Loud Records.
Loud Records, you got it, man. And so it was very fun to be with Steve, and he would be another person that'd be fun to talk to about his experience and us working together. But it was relatively short-lived because of the restructuring of Universal and what was going on over there. So Asleep in the Bread Aisle was actually the only album that I was able to put out with Steve and Scooter.
And he pushes the carriage in which you were sitting in it at that time in the music video for Rock Boys.
You got it, man. And Steve's a blast. I mean, he can laugh at his own joke, and he understands how fortunate he is. He's had some health scares along the way that makes him really appreciate life. And I think, like, whenever you're working with people who appreciate, how resilient yet how fragile life is, you can have some fun and take some chances.
Yeah, but I mean, you put out incredible records throughout your career, and especially I Love College. Do you ever get tired of people bringing that up? Because I've heard Nas say about Illmatic, he's so tired of hearing that because that's what he's known for. And you got with Nas, the It Was Written, the Stillmatics. Do you ever get tired of when people constantly bring up I Love College? Because that is the record that put you on the map. But as I said before, my definition of you is the greenhouse effect volumes.
Well, shit, man, I'll trade Nas I Love College for Illmatic. How about that? But you know what, man? For a while, I was bummed out about it. For not like bummed, but it was just so polarizing. And so, like, you'd go and do a show, and maybe 75% of that audience only wants to hear I Love College. But it also presented me with my, like, the real challenge of a career, of my career, of, like, getting people to go along for the ride, and not just let's funnel beer and chant do something crazy. It taught me so much. It taught me so much about myself. It taught me so much about the music game and entertainment industry. I learned so much by that being kind of like this focal point of a career. And I'll never forget. I was a Peter Rosenberg show out in Austin, Texas, and I was really done with I Love College at the point. And I had, like, kind of moved on and wanted to, like, focus on grind, that single grind, and kind of just this more upbeat, um, just music that was something else. But I knew the responsibility that I had to, like, shut up and play the hits kind of vibe. And we're in Texas, and I Love College comes on, and just people start climbing on each other's shoulders, and there's they just having a great time. And again, it's not about me, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that. And so, I love college means a lot of different things to me. But ultimately, it's a great foundation coming from a place of like, carefree, having some fun, a great moment in time, and just hopefully that an audience is willing to build off of that rather than just stay there. And so it's been tricky, I can't lie. And I think that's probably why a lot of artists like really hate their biggest hit. But as I reflect on my career, I can't say it's a bad thing. I think it's given me a very unique character in the rap world. I think it's a great starting point when someone goes, "Oh, Asher Roth, he's that I Love College kid. Cool. Like, what's he up to now?" And I just have to be able to make sure that I have an answer to that question. But for the most part, audiences are going to move on for the most part. And so if you're lucky enough to have a 10-year, 15, 20-year career and you have an audience that's following you around and tuning into what you're doing, you just hope that your music and what you're doing is just getting, better. And
Mhm.
so I feel like that's what I'm doing.
100%. You're still going strong with your music, and the fan base is dedicated. It's the hardcore fan base, the diehards that you have. Did any party movies, as far as because Pursuit of Happiness with Project X came out, did
Mhm.
anyone from Project X or any other party movies around that time reach out to you and using your song a part of their movie?
Well, Jesse Marco's my homie. Big shout out to Jesse Marco, who is the DJ in Project X. I will say that Questlove reached out for the Amy Schumer show to use Lark on My Go-Kart as the opening credits and Universal Music because they own the publishing to Asleep in the Bread Owl, gave them some astronomical number. And so they just ended up doing an interpolation. So if you go back and you watch Amy Schumer's show and you listen to the opening credit song, it's going to sound eerily similar like Lark on My Go-Kart, but it isn't. Um, yeah, I Love College was its own beast, so I know that we got Be By Myself and Cabin in the Woods. That was a funny moment. That was probably the first time I'd heard my music in a movie. And that's kind of addicting. You kind of you do want to be, you do want your music to be kind of a fabric of scenes and of people's lives for sure.
And it's amazing. That's history right there. You being in a horror movie, your music being featured in a horror movie, a big time one at
Right.
that, in which people look back on in the Cabin in the Woods, is how the horror community is kind of embracing the hip hop community in a way, because in the new Scream movie, they had a DJ Khaled song in there, which I
Oh,
was
wow.
surprised about.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it's working nowadays. I mean, it is kind of insular. There's two things going on. Some people are just trying to get all but free music licensed because licensing music can be a freaking pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But then also sometimes you do want to make sure you can either maybe break a record or introduce a song. You see it at the end of episodes on HBO or some of those times, some of those shows, because TV has become such a monster that sometimes records are getting broken at the beginning or the end or in those music in those episodes. And then, yeah, like you're saying with Scream, these big, maybe you just want to get a very obvious artist to be a part of it. I haven't seen the new Scream. Is it out yet? Sorry
Yeah,
to ask that question.
it's out. I just went this past Saturday night for opening weekend, and I'll admit I was paranoid with the whole COVID thing going on out here with Omicron, and but I went. I had to go see it because I'm a diehard horror Scream fan, and the movie I would highly recommend it if you're a horror Scream fan. I'll tell you that.
Now, what would be your top, not to switch the tables right now in an interview, but what would be your top horror movie? Because horror movies, good horror movies, a lot like hip hop music, you know what I mean? It's been hard to make a good horror movie lately. Do you
Yeah.
have one that you would say, "Hey man, I'm really impressed with this horror movie in the new age"?
Mm. That's tough. I'll give you one. I think it's from 2012 or 2013. If I were to highly recommend it to someone, I would say Sinister.
Okay, is that Ari with the same dude that did Midsummer?
No, that's Hereditary, but I would recommend Hereditary
Hereditary.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I really loved Hereditary and Midsummer. I did a kick back and forth. I thought I forget his name off the top.
Ari
Ari
Aster,
Aster.
yeah,
Yeah, he's a beast, man.
he
And
is.
I really appreciated his kind of spin on things. But again, I think, from my understanding, a student of the game, a student
Yeah.
of the horror world, and really into it. And so, you know, growing up for me, the slasher films and stuff, getting to them, I really enjoyed Pet Sematary. Did you ever see
Stephen
Pet
King.
Sematary?
Yep.
That was a beast of a horror movie that kind of spooked me for a little bit. And they've been given, you know, Chucky scared the hell out of me, but he's Child's Play has been getting a good run.
With the new Chucky series too.
It's stuck around for sure. They've been having some fun with that, but it's cool to hear that you're a horror guy.
Yeah, man, 100%. Night of the Living Dead, 1968, is actually an interesting movie, important film, not only for their first black lead in a role, but Griselda samples Night of the Living Dead in their music, and Benny the Butcher specifically in Tana Talk 3. If you go and listen to some of the records, They're Coming to Get You is referenced in some of those songs.
Cool. I'm gonna check that out. 1968, Night of the Living Dead. I did not know that.
Yeah.
That was the first black lead in a horror film in
I,
general.
I believe that was, yeah.
Very cool. Very cool.
Dwayne Jones, yeah.
Wow. Fun, dude. Very fun.
Huge stuff. I want to get back to your career and just reading things online that you had a record with the game I read about. That
Oh
was
yeah.
yeah.
There's a few things. I mean, the game and I had a few conversations. Just being out in LA for a little bit in same place, same time. I think we ended up putting something out called White Soft Porn,
Mhm.
which is out there for those who want to dig through the catacombs. And there was a Splish Splash record that game featured on with Pharrell that never came out. The Pharrell stuff, you know, was a lot of fun. I wish we would have taken a few more risks. But just, you know, again, Pharrell taught me just so much about like approach to the game. You know what I mean? You know, again, to tie it back into sports, Brandon Ayuk earlier in the year with the 49ers
Mhm.
was what people were calling in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse. And, you know, and as a second year wide receiver, he's like kind of learning how to be a pro and what you have to do, you know, and that kind of block and like, you know, even the plays that you're not involved, you know, you still gotta play. And so I had a similar experience with Pharrell. He kind of like, you know, really was talking me through the things I got to do to be a pro. And you know, one of those things obviously was putting together a more obvious record when I wanted to go a little bit more abstract. And that was the joint with the game on it that was on who bodied that verse, by the way, but the world may never know.
Oh, what doesn't the game body? I mean, for
It's true,
the
man.
game has always been underrated to me. He doesn't get enough praise. I mean, you look at the documentary, people call that a classic album, but the
Hmm.
documentary too was a banger. The Red album, Doctor's Advocate, his new
Yeah.
song with Kanye West that he just released, Easy.
Yeah, you're right, man. I think the game might be underappreciated.
Yeah,
Uh, and you know, iconic cover art.
yeah,
Can't sleep on iconic cover art. You know,
no,
definitely something that you can picture right away. And but again, talk about hunger, man. He kept his hunger, you know?
yeah. And you bring up the term hunger. That's exactly where I feel as though rappers lose throughout their careers. And I brought this up in another interview I did a while back, I think in September, with another artist, in which we brought that up where you hear that some of these real rappers, when they come in here, I'll give you a great example with Davies, Hate Me Now. Hate Me Now, that's like that's what the pinnacle of Davies was for me. But then when you look at Hoffa, I feel as though he lost that edge that he had. And I think it's when you finally get in the game, you break through barriers, you get comfortable. And I feel as though you have to go through something in which you could find your way back to that place that you were. Because that's the thing as an artist, I feel as though you lose your footing in this game and you have
That's
to find your way
interesting.
back.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that because, you know, for me, a lot of the times where like, you know, my delivery got a little bit more nonchalant, you know, when you listen to Flowers on the Weekend,
Yeah.
um, and you're listening to not necessarily the opening track, but maybe the title track, Flowers on the Weekend, you know, I'm kind of chilling. And even a lot of that stuff, I would equate it to just being older and getting older and not like almost just like not even having the energy to like yell on the microphone anymore. But you know, I agree for sure. But I would also say like, you know, there's something kind of nice about getting older. I'm, you know, being young, this is kind of specific to performance in general. You know, if I watch back some of those performances, I'm just jumping around yelling into a microphone. You know what I mean? Not really having any understanding of what a performance is supposed to be like, or, you know, what a microphone is there for, you know? And so as I've gotten older and kind of toned things down a little bit, you start to find this nice balance. But, to your point, it may be artist specific, and there are some things where I would say that some rappers just get lazy. You know what I mean? And artists in general, it's not specific to rap. Sometimes people just get freaking lazy. Maybe what they're putting out is just a contractual obligation. Like, who knows? And I would even use Nas as an example. Like, for what it's worth, what you're talking about, getting back to somewhere. I think Nas has gone through a bunch of stuff and now is back, has gotten back to what everyone's like, yes, this is why I'm a Nas.
Magic. Oh my, that first track, Speechless.
You know what I mean? So it's like that journey, essentially the hero's journey, if you will, like that is kind of what it's all about. And I think it comes with time. I think a lot happens to you as an artist. Again, the EP Gray that I'm gonna put out, it's like it's so much about that. It's so much about like, being hopeless. And I think we go through that as artists, with regardless of the level of success that you're in. I think you get to a point along the way where you're just like, what am I doing? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? Like, I'm not even any good, blah, blah. And then, down the line, whether you meet somebody or you have a dream or something happens and just goes, yo, I got this. Like, let me be reinvigorated. And so there's beauty in it all, man. There's beauty in a little bit of like, being as sharp as you've ever been. And then having to go through the struggle of rediscovering that sharpness.
You're a big sports guy. Last man standing with Akon
Yeah,
making
man.
Madden 12.
Oh yeah, bro. That was a big moment for me too,
Yeah.
man. Being in Madden 12. And again, I was fortunate for that because those recordings were in kind of this no man's land when I like really wasn't working with Universal, but they like those recordings were still happening under that contract. And so I was fortunate because again, Last Man Standing never ended up on an album or anything like that. But our friends over at EA Sports were just like, yo, we'll got this. We'll throw this in Madden. And so, it was able to find a home at a time when I was homeless.
Yeah. And that's a major achievement. Another one that I want to get into was the work that you were talking about years ago with Peter
Oh
Roth.
yeah, man. Yeah, dude, I got to get back to those too. Like Pete and I just really hit it off when we were in the studio together, and he sent me a batch that I loved and worked on some stuff. But again, like, I don't think the average listener or casual music fan, if you will, understands how hard it is to bring stuff to fruition.
Yeah.
And so, great intentions, and Pete and I have a nice little batch of things that we got started, but there's just so much that goes into getting that thing across the finish line. So, hopefully one day, especially with where I'm at now sonically, getting back to just stuff that really jazzes me up, and stuff that just making music that I like, not necessarily worried about, a board of directors liking it. I'm in a really good place that I think a Pete Rock, Asher Roth collaboration would fit right in right now.
Yeah, 100%. It would be great for hip hop. 2009 double XL cover, all add up. You mentioned that on one of your newest songs. That was tough. I really enjoyed that song. I feel as though that you're in a positive space. And what was it throughout your career that made you? Because I feel that with you becoming more positive and just in yourself as a person, meditating. I've noticed that in some of your recent music videos as well. What was it that you went through that you kind of had to visualize yourself outside the body in order to change and just be more positive and just promote positive for everybody?
Well, shit, man. I was in an interesting space because I wasn't a superstar, but I was big enough to not have to go get a regular job, and so I had time. And when you have time to think and reflect, and it's a really scary, I guess, for lack of better words, place to be. And you kind of have to make it up for yourself. And so you've got to have your own definitions of success. And you really have to spend some time with yourself. No one's telling you where to be, no one's really telling you what to do. And so you have this time to reflect on what it is that you want to do. And, ultimately, just, the makeup of who I am as a person. I'm a relatively positive person. I'm a happy person. I'm an appreciative of like kind of the small things. I mean, with Greenhouse Effect Volume 3, it's all about kind of nature, our relationship with it, animals, things like that. Those are kind of things that are important to me. A nice meal. And so having the time to reflect on all that stuff, and really know in my heart of all hearts that it was important to me kind of helped move me forward. And, all add up is again, just kind of a reflection of going through that doubt. Like, I thought we was done for real. It was over with, this game, the entertainment, maybe I got to go get a job or something, but then rediscovering that love and rediscovering on why you even started doing this in the first place. And like, it's important not to lose that, because that's why someone like a Scooter Braun or a Steve Rifkin would be interested in me in the first place, is kind of this magic that I'm portraying, just through the fact of just like, I was going to do this anyway, whether I was signed or not. This is what I do, and this is who I am. And so knowing that about myself allows me to be relatively positive through the whole experience, because I've had the opportunity to have those conversations and really understand who I am.
Mhm. Like Jigga, my game is mental, as Big Pun said on Parental Discretion. That's something that you had to overcome and mention it in when it all add up, is that you can't worry about other people's numbers in their music. You can't worry about that. You have to focus on yourself. And that's something that I had to even realize in my career, just things that I went through a real negative year last year in 2020, 2021, 2022. There's just this different energy. And I feel as though your track was on right in timing with what I was going through and changing my whole mind frame, becoming more positive, and all add up really inspired me as a listener of you.
I love to hear that. And I've actually gotten that compliment a few times of people talking about the timing of that record,
Yeah.
that they actually needed to hear that. And so again, one, that's why we're doing what we're doing. You hope you kind of sync up with that. But it's also, important to like not get in a space where you're like false positive, you know what I mean? Or just like, where you're just like, I've got to be positive. Like, there's the all-encompassing spectrum of human emotion and the ranges of human emotions. It's like, again, what I was talking about with Jimmy Garoppolo and the what he makes you feel. He makes you feel complete utter frustration and then pure bliss, you know what I mean? It's like, this is it's similar, man, when you're creating, like, like you and I do, and you have all of everybody else's shit is in front of your face all the time. And so it's impossible not to compare yourself to other people and not to compare yourself to other people's successes, and that's what I really try to remind myself and remind my listeners to, like, from a meditation standpoint, whatever you want to call it, we use the word meditation because that's what we've been told it's called, but it's just tuning out that other shit, man, tuning out everybody else's shit that is just in our faces all the time, and really centering in and focusing in on what you've got going on, what you can control, all those things. Politics, specifically federal and national politics, is just fucking theater, and it's got everybody freaking out and yelling at each other, when really they should be focusing on what they can control, what's going on in their own backyard, in their community, city council meetings, all those things. And so I don't want to go too far down that road, but it's just like,
I agree with you.
but it's just those things. It's just like, we are so distracted and we have so many things that are almost basically designed for us to be paying attention to. Just recently, I tweeted out, where attention goes, energy flows. And it's really freaking important, like, that people understand that what they're paying attention to is where your energy is going to go. And so people are vying for that energy all day, and they have all the resources in the world to get that from you. And so, the importance of, the reminders in Greenhouse Effect Volume 3 and in this conversation right now is for us to remind ourselves to just turn that stuff off, even if it's just for 15 minutes. Like, that's what's crazy. It doesn't need to be all day.
No.
You don't need to go on Vipassana and like on a 3, 4, 5, 7-day silent retreat. You just need to take 20 minutes and go, all right, I'm off my computer, I'm off my phone, I'm off this shit. How am I doing? Okay, cool. My shoulder's a little tight. You know what I mean? Let me chill for a second. Let me like get this out and take that time. And like, again, all add up. Those little incremental moments of taking those moments to just like be with yourself, they add up. And suddenly you're like, okay, I know who I am. Suddenly you're less reactive when someone's freaking you out, all of those things. And so, yeah, man, again, that was a bit of a tangent, but like, it's that stuff to me is just dumb important.
Yeah. Especially in serving as an inspiration for people going through difficult times, because COVID-19 with Omicron and the surge now, we thought months ago that we'd be out of the pandemic. We're still in it. People are going at each other's throats with wearing masks, vaccines, and politics and all that stuff.
Mhm.
I just hope that we eventually get out of this. I mean, what is your thoughts on everything that we're going on through as far as the pandemic? Because I feel as though that the news as a whole has put the pandemic aside, and where there's people still dying. You look at the cases in Omicron, it's worse now in the pandemic in certain statistics than it was when it first started.
Yeah, I think it's very real. And
Yeah.
so what I would say is that I needed this as well, because being somebody who just does his own thing, there was moments of selfishness where I'm going to I'm gonna go get a drink, or
Yeah.
I'm gonna go get a burger or whatever it may be. There's an incredible documentary, I believe it's on Hulu, called The First Wave,
Mhm.
and it documents kind of, I guess, March of 2020 all the way to maybe July, March, April, May, June, July, yeah, about that first 3 months. And it's so humanizing. It goes to show how real this all is. But this is, to me, a kind of a microcosm in cooperation, and a lot of a really strong test in people's patience and problem solving. And you're seeing things like the supply chain and inflation, and you can pick any sector of this, the pandemic, and see how much stress it has put on us as a society. And so there's so much that we can learn about ourselves, and also so much that we can learn about this what we call society, as far as bringing some of the work back home, and creating and manufacturing here, down the street. Again, Philadelphia, moving back to Philadelphia, and wanting to be somebody who can help bring industry here. Again, this is all just a microcosm for how much, how off center we are. Again, health insurance, right?
Yeah.
Again, like just universal health insurance. You would think that the pandemic, that would be everything else go away. Let's just talk about that. Like, that's not even the conversation. We're talking about wearing masks. And like, what bothers me about that, and I get it, but the riling up of a side of people about liberties, when it's a simple request to help other people, you would hope that people are just like, no big deal, dog. I'll throw a mask on. It's not a big deal. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'll rock this. Let me protect myself, and let me protect other people. Now let's move on to something else. But we couldn't even get past level one, bro, as people. And like, again, as a collective. I was talking about this on um, with my buddy Nick in Truth Studios. Was like, I've had these moments in my life, experiences, if you will, that allowed me to understand that, like, you are me and I am you, and you are a reflection of me and I'm a reflection of you, and all these things that, like, it's more in speaking in the terms of like of energy. And when you're removing your physical body from it all, we're kind of like, one big organism. And that's how I feel about Earth too. It's just like, we're one organism that needs to be working together and cooperating. And so, in different rounds of conversation, we've talked about displacement theory, that if you're just a spinning molecule or whatever it may be, and you take all of this oil from this part of the organism and you move it over to the top, of course it's going to start spinning a little bit differently, just a little bit. And so that idea of us collectively being in this, and I know MasterCard and these fucking credit cards use it as a slogan, that we're all in this together, and
Yeah.
that it almost cheapens the message of people understanding that we have a responsibility for one another. And somewhere along the lines, that all got lost. And so, like, I tie this all back into sports and hip hop, because one, the knowledge of self in rap music, and rap music is a really uh, appropriate conveyor of the message of that, of a collective, of that we're all in this together. And Bill fucking Belichick and the New England Patriots of do your job. You know what I mean? If you do your job and we all work together, we will win Super Bowls. But somewhere along the lines, man, the coaching has just all been about you, me. And you can't blame them, because people are essentially on, like, I got to get mine. I'm on some survival shit. I got to get mine. And once I get mine, I'm out of here. And so, like, you can't even be mad. And all of the criticisms and all this stuff about America right now, the not trusting of the government, we've come by that pretty honestly, man. You know what I mean? Like, we've
Yeah.
known the truth for a really long time, and we've just decided to turn turned a blind eye. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the course of this year and next year. You know, if you look at it as a download, let's say we reset in 2020, you know, 2021, 2022, 2023 is really only the beginning of that download. You know what I'm saying? So we've got a whole download to go for the rest. And so hopefully by 2024, 2025, you know, we're starting to see some of the changes that we made being implemented. But you know, it's been frustrating to say the least. And so I conclude all that by saying it's very real, what we're going through. And I hope people at least understand that, you know.
Flowers on the Weekend, Still Got Some was my favorite song off of the album. I think that was the real hip hop track on there for me. What does it mean to you when you see in the comments and just what you hear from fans that this album inspired people and it saved their lives?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like you don't even really know the weight of it, right?
Yeah.
Only they know the weight of it, like, you know, because words only convey so much, bro, you know. And so they know that, like, hey, this record meant a lot to me, and I throw this on and it gives me a deep breath. You know, I've had those moments, obviously, with music, whether it be my own with a recording or something else that I've heard that just gives me goosebumps and makes me feel some type of way. I remember I was going through some shit and heard How I Got Over by The Roots, and that really helped me when I was getting on a flight and I felt very, very alone. You know, so I know what it's like to get a record at the right time, and to, again, contribute, to be somebody that people look at and go, man, that dude helped me out. I mean, again, you're just trying to, you know, leave the world, or at least your room or whatever you got going on, leave it a little bit better than when you got there.
Yeah. And it's amazing how you've had an impact on so many people's lives. Asher, when you look back on your entire career, what are you most proud of about yourself and what you've achieved in this game so far?
You know, man, I standing up for myself, and I think I hope that other people can do the same thing. You know, like, you know, there's so much around that wants us to conform and that wants us to be a certain thing. You know, you're seeing it with maybe even the standard of beauty with you know, teenagers, male and female, with Instagram, and you know, you're seeing it with sounds and music. A lot of the drums, you know, these kind of trap drums, you're seeing them become very prevalent. You see these trends, you see these things that are kind of, you know, meant to reach a mass audience. And I hope that people, when they listen to that stuff, or they see somebody and they say, that's not really me, they stand by that and say, you know, that's not really me. I'm gonna do this, because there's so many influences out there encouraging you to kind of, you know, conform and go with the trends. And so I'm proud of myself for kind of, like, you know, going the route that I went. And you know, like, again, like I was saying with the How I Got Over moment, like, it got really lonely. And you know, when you heard it and All Add Up, and you'll hear it in Gray as well, like, you know, these very powerful moments of doubt, they're going to happen. And I think it's important for people to know, whether you're a creative or whether you're somebody that's just having the human experience, you're gonna have lows, you know. You know, but they're also going to be joined with some really special moments. And so just, like, you know, keep going and believe in yourself, and take those 15, 20, 25 minutes out of your day and just check in with yourself and listen to yourself and how it's doing. Maybe you need a pal or somebody you can call and talk to and say, yo, man, what's up? How are you feeling? You know, those are all very important things. But at the end of the day, listen to yourself, and stand up for yourself. And I think you'll be pretty happy who you are at the end of the day.
Mhm. You haven't had a manager or an agent or anyone help you since 2011. You're on your own. You're your own boss. You're releasing new material. What's next for you in your career? I know you mentioned the EP, but what's next for you in your career that you're looking to achieve?
So I really want to start signing other artists and helping artist development, you know, just what I've gone through as an artist, as a young kid in my early 20s and now in my 30s, you know, being able to pass on that information and kind of help people kind of, you know, skip a couple of steps, not necessarily just as far as not have to make the same mistakes that I did. You know, we can cut that fat. So artist development's really important to me. Obviously, Sunflower Philly is really important to me as well. Just having a community space, a performance space in Philadelphia. So I'll be concentrating on, you know, just creating the best music that I can for myself, and then also, you know, helping other people kind of, get to a place where they feel confident in themselves, and help their message reach an audience, whether that be, digitally with helping them release music, or right here on stage at Sunflower.
Mhm. And you're doing that. Asher Roth, is there anything else you would love to let my audience know? Anything, man.
Max, I appreciate you, man. I just want to say, super professional with how you go about your business.
Thanks, man.
You are a true journalist, and somebody who truly is doing something that's hard to do, and that's help other people get their stuff out. So I just want to say I appreciate you from myself, and to everybody else listening, I'm sure they do as well. So thank you, man.
Thanks, man. Asher Roth, I appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you for all your work over the years with the Greenhouse Effect Volume 1, 2, especially 3 with the new one, because those were some of the soundtracks of my life growing up, with all the lyrics that you've had over the years, man, because that's what I enjoy most. And I respect you. And I love to see that you're continuing to create music and now looking to take artists under your wing to continue your legacy. And that's important, man. And when we look back on it, the Asher Roth story is going to be cemented in the history of hip hop for sure.
When I'm 65 years old, be making my fly as shit, bro.
Yeah. You'll have you're gonna have an alter ego like Dr.
I think
Octagon,
so,
you think?
man.
Yeah.
It's coming soon. It's got to come soon, man. It has to.
It definitely has. And they can follow you, all the listeners listening right now. If they don't follow you already, make sure to follow them on Instagram and Twitter at Asher Roth. Go support them, the Greenhouse. You got the new one out, Volume 3. Make sure you go check it out. You got the upcoming Gray EP. We're
Mhm.
looking forward to it, man. And you're always welcome on the show. When you release a new EP, we'd love to have you on and talk about it, man.
We'll do exactly that, bro. Keep a lookout, on the Discord, University of College, and then just Asher Roth on Instagram and Twitter. Appreciate
Yep.
y'all.
Of course, man. Greenhouse Volume 3. Go check it out. Real hip hop. You know what it is. Asher Roth, enjoy the rest of your night, man, and stay safe. I look forward to the upcoming music.
Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah. Peace out, man.
Cheers.
Peace.